This is the Accsoon CineEye 2 Pro wireless video transmitter.
This is a CineD Gear News video.
Welcome everybody to another Gear News video from CineD. Today I'm talking to Accsoon, more specifically to Adam from Accsoon. How are you?
Oh, fine, thank you.
We actually were in touch with you guys for the first time a few years ago when you introduced the original CineEye wireless transmitter, a very small device. And I think we discovered it at a trade show and we were really excited about it because it was quite affordable and it was made to actually transmit to mobile devices for quite an affordable price. So what can you, before we talk about the new product that we will talk about today, what can you tell me about the history of Accsoon and where you guys came from and how you came up with that idea?
Okay, initially I think it would be around 2016 to 2017 when we were attending a lot of expos. It was very clear to us that video transmitters was on the rise. There were increasing demands for it. But at the time, there were mostly zero latency video transmitters. They were kind of bulky, expensive, not something you would feel like is affordable. And at the time, Accsoon started out being a gimbal company. We thought to ourselves, back then it had very fierce competition. We thought to ourselves, why don't we make a killer feature that is video transmission system built into a gimbal? Now the other transmission solutions are bulky, expensive, and they draw a lot of power. Why don't we make something affordable that is low power consumption and, just better for our audience who don't have to have that top-notch quality and zero latency. So we took about a year to develop our own video transmission system built into our flagship gimbal at that time. It's called A1 Pro. It was finished around 2018. And then in 2018, we showcased it around the world, in different expos, especially in August, BRTV in China and IBC. And the feedback we got is great. People just really wanted this kind of stuff. Back then, it was no standard feature. Now it is, but back then there was no features like it. And people just really needed it. So it just naturally came to us that why don't we take it apart? It could serve a much broader audience. So that was the reason behind why we made the original CineEye. And being a production tool, a lot of people just naturally need video transmission system. Not for top-notch, for ACs. They want something for the clients. Something that would have, maybe loading LUT feature, basic feature, and that's about it. So we made the original CineEye, and this is the reason why we made this CineEye. And another important aspect of it is being that you have to know these consumer devices, they are made in very large quantities. They use actually very top-notch screens and components. Sometimes even the best, very expensive, the dedicated video monitors can't get. So why don't we take advantage of those consumer devices and use this to make them able to view the image signal from the camera directly on their good smartphones? And that's why we made CineEye. And once we released CineEye Gen 1, the vanilla one, we got some feedback. People wanted even smaller, so we took out the internal batteries and we made the CineEye Air. It is something that's solely meant to play on your gimbal. It has to plug into a power source. Usually you would have a power connection on your gimbal anyway, so that's meant for that. After some time, we got a lot of feedbacks. It sold really, especially the vanilla one, it sold better than expected. So we got some feedbacks, some good, some bad. The most demanding feature should be audio. The second one is, sometimes it doesn't work. You want really good stability. And the third one would be, general upgrades. Sometimes when you see this, you don't have a lot of control over it. Sometimes, small things like your phone can't receive the network signal from CineEye Gen 1. And you would freak out sometimes. But it tends to be usually a very small problem that you can solve very easily. But we don't have a lot of indicators on this. You only have an LED light that should be blinking when it doesn't work properly, and battery indicator, and only 2 buttons, power button, reset button, and that's all you get. So to make it more intuitive, making sure that you know what's the status of this device, give you more control over it, not to frustrate over small problems. We have to give it much more control. We have to give our customers much more control over the unit themselves. So based on these 3 major feedbacks, we made these 2, the CineEye 2 and CineEye 2 Pro.
So you're referring to the problem that a lot of people had, that sometimes even the network wouldn't show up, right? Because you have to connect via wireless network, I think, to the original CineEye. And I think sometimes you said that on some phones it's not so easy to actually find the network, and then it's hard to actually troubleshoot the device.
The problem is CineEye we didn't design it like most consumer devices. CineEye can use a lot of 5 GHz channels, but the problem is your smartphones don't. According to different regional RF regulations, and sometimes the internal network processing module can be crippled if you're buying cheap devices. These consumer devices don't get to receive all the channels available. So sometimes we're just auto-switching to a channel that your phone, your smart devices cannot receive, which they're blind of. But actually, there was nothing wrong with the unit. But you have to reset it, and you don't know what's going on, except the LED light might be constantly lit, and it should work, but it doesn't work. It gets frustrating, but this time it gets solved.
So fast forward to the present, fast forward to 2020, you just introduced actually the CineEye 2 and now also the CineEye 2 Pro, and we're talking about the Pro today. So what are those new devices? I mean, you can also mention what the normal CineEye 2 is and what the differences are to the Pro. But what's most interesting, I guess, for our audience is what the Pro is all about.
Okay, the simple one is actually the 2. It's a step up from the original. This is its bigger brother. It has much beefier build quality. You have control, and you have an OLED screen that tells you is the device receiving the video signal and audio signal from the HDMI source correctly, how many devices has successfully connected to it, and what channel is it using. And you've got buttons to choose to manually set which channel you want to use in case something, your phone can't recognize its network. You have more features like HDMI loop out. You have camera control port for controlling the stop and record of your cameras. And this time, it takes NPF batteries. We want to take it a further step. We want to take it a step up. So we are targeting it more for a professional setup. We're targeting it to those who only want to use their smart devices to monitor. And this would be the ultimate choice. It's still the foldable antenna, quite small shape. And we also give you a DC port, accepting a very wide range of voltages from 7.4 all the way to 16.8. Basically, we mean you should use a D-tap to a DC cable to directly plug it into your V-mount batteries. and it's going to be much smoother experience. You don't have to worry about all the consumer level stuff. You know, sometimes cable might be crippled, this and that.
So the normal CineEye 2 is still just the sender unit that is made to be received only with smartphones or tablets, right? But the Pro is like a more traditional kind of wireless video transmission, because you also have a receiver with an HDMI connector. So you are not only relying on Wi-Fi, but I think the additional feature is that you can also receive on smart devices as well from the Pro, right?
Yes. So if you really want to talk about competing products, I feel like there aren't really any competing products for CineEye 2. The only thing that I do feel like come close to it would be Mars X from Hollyland, but considering its price, image quality, and you know, just range-wise, it should be more of a competition to our Gen 1 CineEye. And then this one, you know, it didn't have a predecessor. This is our step up. We wanted to make it more like a competition to already existing budget Wi-Fi solutions like the HoloLens Mars 400 series and Atom 500 series from Vexis. It is priced at $599 US. This one is actually at $249 US. You know, for other budget competitors offering at this price range, you only get about 500 to 400 feet of range. But with this one, you're getting 1,200 feet of range. And honestly, in my opinion, better latency than others, and the image quality is on par. They're basically the same, like all the competitors' offerings. So let's first talk about the minor features first. Okay, like the CineEye 2 Pro, you get OLED screen for controlling. Unlike CineEye 2 Pro, because it has a dedicated receiver. Sometimes, you know, for these kind of budget options, you have to set channels. You have to go into sub-menus, very complicated, and you only have this much controls. It takes a lot of time. This time we're using something we call easy pairing knob, because, well, for others, they're using either 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz. We're actually taking advantage of both of them. Let's talk about that later. What it does is actually, when you set a channel, when you set a pairing group, it's going to send out a different network, and all the other receivers will join that network too when it's booted. And when they are fully booted and join the network, they will automatically scan and join. You don't have to worry about setting any channels. It's all automatically done. The settings will match too. And something else is okay. It's still got HDMI loop out, like 2, and it has a control port to control your camera's start and record, just like 2 as well. It also takes NPF batteries, and it also has a DC input on the side of the battery plate. What this thing is really good at, honestly, in my opinion, is the dual band channel. Is the dual band transmission. We're calling it dual band. You have to know each time, especially when you are at a film gear expo, there are a lot of interference, and most of them being 5 gigahertz, or maybe for sound devices, you know, the other sound gears, they tend to be 2.4 gigahertz. What they do is they usually use something called auto channel switching. What you get is just lots of devices it's detecting a lot of traffic, busy traffic in its channel. It's just going to scan and switch to a different channel. But you're getting just a lot of traffic. And this kind of auto switching never solves it. And we thought to ourselves, you know, 5 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, a lot of people use it, but they only use one of them. Why couldn't we take advantage of both of them? So if one of them being like 2.4 or 5 gigahertz, being heavily interfered, or maybe just two of them being somewhat interfered. If the data packages are received somewhat fine, we can combine them and make sure you get the image signal just fine. It never drops. And with a 5G thing and millimeter wave being more popular, I feel like it's more of a common knowledge that assuming your antenna doesn't change, the less gigahertz you have, the more effective range you cover. And this goes the same for this. Because our competitors only use 5 gigahertz network, they will inevitably have much lesser range than our offerings. What we do is actually interestingly, they always use 2 antennas, but we do 4 antennas, 4x4 MIMO. We use 2 different networks, 5 gigahertz to send out the main video stream, and a 2.4 gigahertz that's only meant for receivers. We're going to send out redundant streams in that channel. So if you're in if the receiver is placed at very long range, it's getting more of a 2.4 gigahertz and it's losing a lot of data packages in the 5 gigahertz, it's going to intelligently combine the data, filling in the blanks using the redundant stream to the main video stream, and it's going to give you just fine image signal. It never drops. So the range can be much further, and not only that, in normal ranges you get much better network reliability.
You guys also have bitrate control in the CineEye 2 Pro. What can you tell me about that?
Yes, I almost forgot about it. On CineEye 2 and CineEye 2 Pro, CineEye 2 and CineEye 2 Pro, we actually have 3 stops of BRAY control. With the original CineEye, we didn't have an option to switch it. The first batch we shipped should be around 8 megabits per second. And because it's normally a bit higher than the rest of, it caused some problems. The range was subpar for our claims, and a lot of people complained about it. So for later batches, we tuned it down to 6 megabits per second, around 6 megabits per second. But what we do find a lot is that a lot of people really care about image quality. So for those kind of customers, we are offering a lot of options for this on these CineEye Gen 2s. First is HQ. We offered 3 stops, HQ, normal, and speed. They will change the bitrate quite much. This HQ being high quality, it's going to be 8.5 megabits per second to 6 megabits per second, assuming the what's on the screen is always changing. If it's stable, the bitrate will be much lower. It's not a stable, it's not a static bitrate. And normal, it's going to be around 6 to 4 megabits per second. And for speed, you're going to get 4 to 3 megabits per second, around that. What really impacts it is because as bitrate increases, you have to send out data packages more, and you have to successfully receive it. And if you don't, you're going to get a lot of glitches, and stability will drop. So it's going to affect range. But if you're shooting indoors, like assuming you're shooting indoors, and you're not viewing from too far away, and the network is very stable, you can just comfortably set it to HQ. But I have to warn you, because these stops have different amounts of bit rate, so the buffer on these smart devices will also increase as you increase the quality. The latency will also increase, but by a very small margin. It should be around 10 to 20 milliseconds. Even if you set to HQ, it's still going to be our claims below average 60 milliseconds, which is still, in my opinion, the best in the industry for Wi-Fi based video transmitters.
Very interesting. I think this is, if that's true, which I assume is true, but I will test it, of course. I think this is really a killer feature, as you said, because in reality, with many of those systems, we all know how it is, that the actual range can never be reached, which is of course normal because usually you don't have unobstructed view. But even if you have two different systems from different manufacturers stating the same range, often the efficiency is different. And I also have found on other systems before that the amount of antennas actually makes a huge difference with those systems. But wrapping up the hardware part, actually, you guys also have a iOS app that is actually has a lot of features. I mean, even for the original CineEye, it had features like peaking and stuff like that, which was really great to have because most other apps on the market are actually seeing the receiver app as something for a client or director without any, like additional viewing features like for a camera assistant. But you guys actually put in those features like peaking and zebras and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's been taken to the next level with the new app as far as I have seen. So what can you tell me about that?
We did actually, after a year after its launch, we actually added a lot of features, like loads of features. Focus peaking, which is quite important, histogram, waveform, RGB parade, anamorphic discretes for all popular ratios, and ratio markings, safe margin guides, grid guides, all kinds of guides, monochrome features, RGB single channel, the loading LUTs, this and that, but it gets quite complicated. So with CineEye 2, we give it a different page. The reason we have to give it a different page is because first you have to know the reason we could have this kind of low latency is actually because we don't use open protocols like SRT or RTMPs. We use our private protocols. On Gen 1, Gen 1 being a Gen 1 product, it wasn't perfect. But on Gen 2, not only did we increase the network processing module dramatically and giving it much better stability, we also changed the base level protocol a bit, allowing it to have even less latency. So the base level was quite different. That's why we have to give it a different page. Not that we are trying to abandon our customers or whatever. It's not like that. The most important thing is that we've added too much features, and sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming. So we changed the UI a bit, making it much more modern, more pleasing to look at. After some time, although it's not very high on the list, we will be updating the UI for our Gen 1 customers. But I cannot promise that they will have later features, what we're developing, some streaming and other kinds of features. I cannot promise that Gen 1 products will have that feature, but the UI should later be improved. That's about it. And what's most important is that, Accsoon being a Chinese company, most of the smartphones used in China is based on Android. So we will always maintain the best, we will still keep maintaining our app on both iOS and Android. As far as I know, some film gear related app sometimes just get abandoned, and after some system update, you can't use them anymore, which is kind of frustrating. We won't make it happen. We're always going to make sure you use our app just fine. It's going to boot just fine, even for our very old, not very old, even for our gimbal users. You can still use our app to tune your gimbal settings now.
Okay, that's a really, really important answer actually, because that's something that a lot of people forget, that the software support often ends at some point, and especially on products like the original CineEye and the CineEye 2, you're really dependent on a working app. So it's really great to hear that you guys are committed in maintaining it even for future versions of those mobile operating systems. Well, thank you, Adam. I think that was quite comprehensive. We already talked about the pricing on the CineEye 2 Pro, which is $599, and I assume it's available now. Can people already order it?
Yes, these two are already available now. And for customers who use SDI cameras, these SDI more professional cameras are getting more popular, you're in for a treat this month. Hopefully, as if nothing goes wrong, it's pandemic age and you don't know. Hopefully you're going to hear more about it this month. Maybe it should be out even this month.
That's great to hear. So a more professional SDI version is what I'm hearing here. Well, thank you, Adam, and thanks for taking the time, and thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned to CineD and our YouTube channel for a lot more gear news videos and very interesting insights from the manufacturers themselves, like this one on our channel, and also, of course, a lot of reviews of cameras and all the latest gear that we usually get our hands on quite early. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.